This from Amy. Hi, Wendy. I finished my first triathlon, Boulder 70.3. I feel underprepared for climbs and elevation gains changes on the bike course coming from a flat land area of Maryland. My question to you, what phase of training should hills start to be a regular staple to prepare for an upcoming race, and how often? What do you think?
I think anytime in your training, whether it's the beginning, middle, or end, you should be doing hills because there are so many benefits to hill training, both running and cycling, from technique, endurance, strength, for sure. And then as you build some volume and get into the later phases of your training plan, then you can add like intervals, tempo work, threshold work, speed work on the hills, especially because you've already been doing it throughout the phases of the training plan. So when I moved from Michigan to Colorado, I think the first year, the hills were really struggled. I struggled big time with the hills and the foothills and the mountains. And so I had to change the cog cassette on my bike. I had to get a smaller chainring in front, and I had to get some smaller ones in back, just so I wasn't like always standing and barely turning the pedals over. And that helped me a lot. And then for me, I just committed because I could. I lived, it was just a 5 mile spin, 3 to 5 mile spin until I got to the foothills. And so I committed to doing all my training in the hills. And as I got more fit and stronger, I was able to actually do some hill climbing at a recovery effort, recovery heart rate, recovery power pace, whatever you're trying to use to determine intensity. And so it's just something that takes time to adapt to. So definitely if you live in an area with hills, don't avoid them because they're hard. They will get easier, and then you'll just get stronger that you can make them as hard or as easy as you want to. Generally speaking though, kind of backtracking, all the plans that we've created on Training Peaks, and pretty much depending on the athlete I'm personally coaching, if their course is going to have a certain amount of elevation gain and loss, when we get, for sure, if we haven't already, when we get to the middle phases, the race specificity phase of training, that's when it's ideal to ride and run on the terrain that your race is going to have. And of course, like Boulder 70.3, all those hills come in the beginning. I think it's a 2-loop course. So you're going to get them in the beginning of the first loop, and then you're going to get them in the beginning of the second loop. And then there's a lot of downhill. So I think for that type of course, I would also train, for me, because I'm competitive and I'm going to compete. I'm going for a certain time, not just to finish. I would have to train my body to feel comfortable going fast on the downhill section, because there is quite a bit of downhill. For every uphill, there's generally a downhill. So definitely, if possible, all phases of training, but for sure in the race specificity phase, which is usually 8 to 12 weeks out from race day.
So I just typed in here looking for chain rings for climbing, and this kind of breaks it down a little bit by mountain biking as well. But they say here road racing bikes typically have 2 chain rings, 52 teeth in the big ring and then 32 in the small ring. This is sometimes referred to as a standard double. And the easiest way to get lower gears with this setup is to convert your entire crankset to a compact double, which has a 50-tooth big ring and a 34-tooth small ring. And they say for road bikes with 3 chain rings are typically in the range of 52, 42, and 30. That sounds more like mountain biking, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Because they there's a hybrid option here as well. And they say if you're switching to a mountain bike cranks, those are usually 44, 32, 22 for the front. So for triathletes or road bike, we're looking at 53s. Is that what we're looking at? Or what's your combination?
53. I think I have a 53. I might have a 54.
Okay. So
and then the one in the cassette and back just depends on the wheel that I'm using, but usually I'll use an 1125.
Okay.
When I lived in Colorado and I did this event called the Triple Bypass, the first year I did it, my legs were really struggled because I didn't have enough gearing as much as I wanted to. So I think the third time I did it, I borrowed my friend's wheel because she had a 34 in the back, and that made it so much easier because I was spinning more on the mountain passes like Vail Pass and Loveland Pass.
Okay. Okay. Well, hopefully it helps answer part of Amy's question. She did have a here. She said that my pace slowed toward the end of the bike, and the run was so hot that I walked more than I planned. We've all been there. Could have hydrated more, and was happy that she finished. But now what? Is any indication of how the bike went for her, or what happened where she had a rougher run than usual? Just wasn't prepared for the hills.
I think congratulations, your first triathlon is a 70.3.
Yep.
That's great. Usually I like to have athletes do a sprint or an Olympic before they do a 70.3 just to get more experience. So for Amy, just getting more racing experience, 5Ks, 10Ks, half marathons, sprints, Olympic, half Ironman, triathlons is going to go a long way. And it sounds like she's learned a lot. She learned that she needs to do more hill work. If, when she goes back home to Maryland, hopefully she'll find some terrain or train hills like on a thing like Zwift or Trainer Road or some sort of indoor training app. Maybe some strength training is going to, well, not maybe, but for sure strength training, if she hasn't been incorporating that, is going to be helpful as she, moves on to her next season. And you just learn about pacing, even though you may have followed a plan and you tried to learn a little bit about pacing during the plan. It's really when you get experience racing that you really learn that kind of thing. If you went out too hard, it's your first one, you don't really know yet what that really means. You probably may want to ease back a little bit in the beginning, especially because the hills are in the beginning. So you'll just get experience with pacing. And I'm sure, doing your first one, having a half marathon after 56 miles, that's a lot. And so not knowing exactly what you did, but one thing you could do is specifically, intentionally incorporate walk breaks into your run training, where right from the get-go you're running a certain amount of time and then you're walking, like a run 4 minutes, walk 1 minute, and that will prevent you from possibly walking the last 2 or 3 miles if that's something that happened. And then it's always hot in Boulder, but I would always expect it to be hot anywhere I race, because if you can manage hills, wind, and heat, you're going to be stronger than most people on race day. So always, jot down how much you drank and what you ate and drank the day before and the morning of. So you have a record of what you did, so you can look at that and see, I only had 1 water bottle on the bike. That's what I did on my first 70.3, like 30 years ago. I only had 1 water bottle on the bike and I cramped. And so, just making a note of everything, and so you can improve on it and something to work on for your next event.